Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today on employee retention strategies for the new world of work by 360 Learning and Hibob. So we're just going to give people a few minutes to join us. So while we wait, if you would all like to go to the polls tab that should be on the right of your screen, and we would love to know from you guys, if people are leaving your company, what's the biggest reason? So looking for a better work-life balance and flexibility, looking for a better salary, looking for better perks, looking to relocate, or looking for growth opportunities or something new. So you can submit your vote, let us know. Okay, so we've got some results coming in. It looks like a lot of people, about half, are looking for growth opportunities or something new. Okay, yeah, and that number is climbing. Right behind that, looking for a better salary. And then just behind that, looking for a better work-life balance. Okay, almost nobody's looking for better perks, and 0 are looking to relocate. Great. Okay, well, that's very interesting. That's great context for our speakers. I think we've got enough people to get started now, so let's get to it. Again, welcome everyone to this webinar on employee retention strategies for the new world of work. Excuse me. I'm Robin, and I'm part of the content team here at 360 Learning. So we have some great speakers for you today, but just before I introduce them, a couple of housekeeping things. You will all receive the recording of this webinar after the event. There will be a Q&A at the end. And if you do have questions as we go through the presentation, please submit those in the questions tab, not the chat tab. It will just make it easier for us to see them. We'll be launching a couple polls at the end. So again, you can respond to those in the polls tab. And lastly, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little smiley face. You can press this during the presentation to send little emojis out and react to what you're hearing. So we encourage you to use those. Yeah, exactly, just like that. Great. Okay, so here are our great speakers for you today. We have Jonah Goldstein, Head of Learning at 360 Learning, and we have Zoe Haimovich, Senior Director of Content Experience at Hibob. So again, what we're going to be looking at today, who's at risk for quitting their job, why are employees quitting their jobs, what employees expect from a remote and hybrid work, using collaborative learning to engage and retain employees, and we'll also look at employee-expressed learning needs to drive engagement. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic off to Zoe, and she's going to take it from here.
Hi, everyone. So I'll start directly to the point and explain what is this Great Resignation that everybody's talking about. And what we're seeing as the global pandemic recedes, we're seeing a huge growth of people resigning their jobs, and it's been called the Great Resignation. In April, nearly 4 million people quit their jobs, the highest level of turnover in 20 years. In August, it even exceeded that with 4.3 million people quitting their jobs, with prediction of more to come as people across all industries consider their next moves. It seems like people are ready to make a change. It's not getting any slower in September or October. While some turnover is healthy, the Great Resignation has the power to blindside companies if they're not attuned to the main motivations driving this shift. HR leaders need to understand why are people quitting and what are they looking for instead. Accepting the fact that turnovers will always happen, but organizations want to retain their top performers. So we conducted a survey, and we wanted to see, can this be avoided or minimized at least? And we asked 1,000 full-time U.S. employees ages 25 and up working full-time remotely since the beginning of the pandemic. We wanted to check this cohort, this group of people, and understand what are they looking for. And the survey was conducted online, and we made sure that everybody had the experience of working remotely. And the study uncovers the reasoning behind the rise in resignation and shows that employees working for mid-sized companies are more likely to quit, and that the results give valuable insights on what people want and how HR leaders can create positive experiences that will retain and grow the people, even though people want to quit. So I'll just share with you a few slides out of the whole research that is definitely available if you want to read it. We see that mid-sized companies see the highest potential for resignations, while 55% of employees, and I'll tell you a little bit about the background. 55% of employees for larger companies reported that they are working at the same job with the same company over the past 12, 18 months. Only 44% of mid-sized companies, employees working for mid-sized companies. So there's a lot more change in employees working for mid-sized company. In addition, only 16% of employees from larger companies quit their positions, while even during the pandemic, 28% of the people working for mid-sized companies did so. In addition, only 12% were promoted versus 19% working for large companies. So turnover in the US has never been higher. Our research found that the risk is highest for mid-sized companies. And if we look at the graphs on the slide, we can see that employees working for mid-sized companies were thinking about quitting over the last 12 months. 65% were doing that, while only 59% for small companies and 61% for large companies. And when we're saying how likely are you to quit in the next 12 months, we can see that 56% in mid-sized companies are likely or very likely to quit. So people are very serious about this. So more were thinking about it, but a huge amount are still planning to do so. So it's almost double for employees working for mid-sized companies. So we don't have to. It's not going to be a surprise to anybody. Next slide. And why are they quitting? We asked employees, if you did quit your job or are planning to quit your job, what are the main reasons behind the decision? And respondents could choose more than one answer. And most people had 2 or 3 reasons. And when you look deeper into the difference between employees of mid-sized companies and others, it appears that employees of mid-sized companies are searching for a better work-life balance and also looking for better benefits, 45% versus 35% for large companies. Conversely, the main reason employees of large companies would leave is for higher pay. So there's some sort of a compromise there, but employees for mid-sized companies definitely are concerned with where they are today. And they're also risk of losing talent over flexible working models. As companies reevaluate return to the office, many employees expect continued flexible options as the most important benefit of staying at their job. More than half of respondents at mid-sized companies view flexibility as most important to them, compared to 38% at smaller companies. So people are saying, they're actually saying, hey, you let us work from home for a whole year and a half, and now you expect us to come back for 5 days a week. Just does not make sense. While employees have been productive working remotely, it wasn't that they weren't. 71% at mid-sized companies said that their HR teams have backpedaled on policies related to flexibility. In contrast, only 60% of larger companies have backpedaled. And we've seen the articles about this, everybody offering flexible work models. And if mid-sized companies don't do that, people will be very disappointed. And the most direct question about the importance of flexibility was presented to our respondents because we wanted to know if this could be the exact pain point people were feeling. And 56% of employees at mid-sized companies said they would quit, while only 32% of smaller companies and 37% of larger companies said they would quit if flexibility was not an option. Employees in mid-sized companies are productive working from home, and they expect to be respected for that. And they need to manage flexible work models as their employees are productive. And so people don't understand when companies are backpedaling on this. The fear of taking advantage of flexible work raises red flags surrounding equitable hybrid work models. We have seen many benefits of flexible models, and leaders and HR strategists must aim not to alienate those working from home against those who choose to work from the office. And the company culture needs to support people working from home and people working from the office at the same time. So the new world of work needs to be adjusted. Next slide. HR leaders of mid-sized companies will have a difficult time. So finalizing my points and what we've learned from our research, and that companies can decrease the resignation in their company. You can offer solutions for this. So how can you do it? Overall, employees don't want to be in the office 5 days a week. People want more flexibility, and that includes the flexibility to work from anywhere and the flexibility to set working hours. And it's all about the perks. While ping pong tables and happy hours are unlikely to keep employees at the company, other perks such as flexible hours, extra vacation days, work from home opportunities can have a significant impact when it comes to retaining your employees. You need to use surveys and data to inform your people strategies. You can't just make these decisions on your own. You need to ask people, what are they expecting? How do they want to work? People need to be listened to. And managers and HR need to work together. It's a joint effort. The manager-HR relationship is instrumental in avoiding turnover. Managers are an HR team's eyes and ears during this transitional phase of work and are in the best position to guide HR about what might benefit their team. You need to pay attention and make sure managers lead with empathy. Oftentimes we hear the phrase, people don't leave their jobs, they leave their managers. And at times this definitely is the case. Great management boosts employee morale and increases the likelihood of the employee staying. It's many times people say, I'm here because I like working with this manager. Make sure the office has a purpose so employees want to come in. Don't just say come to the office. Make sure it has a purpose. The office is evolving from an everyday workspace to a place of socialization, collaboration, company culture. Companies implementing hybrid models will use the in-office time for meetings, get-togethers, onboarding, and less for individual work. Companies should also make seamless for in-office employees to communicate with remote employees by adding more private meeting rooms for Zoom calls and instituting one person, one screen policy. And then about compensation, we say manage it. Manage compensation the right way. Employees trust when their organization has a regular compensation management cycle and they know there's a reason to wait. And they're not just quiet, they're waiting for the next cycle. Offer recognition, make sure that people feel valued and recognize your employees' hard work. Continuous feedback can make your employees feel valued and appreciated. And be upfront with candidates. Don't leave potential employees with false promises. Otherwise, they'll never be satisfied when they're onboarding, and they'll even leave quicker than you thought. Don't just talk about D&I, be D&I. It's not just enough to hire more people or have D&I training. Employees will leave a company if their company culture makes them feel unwelcome or uncomfortable. Make D&I part of your company culture and organization's DNA, and provide opportunities for growth. And Jonah will talk about this more. Invest in your employees when it comes to career development and growth. If employees cannot advance in your organization, they will look elsewhere. And we saw this on the poll. Make sure they know about pathways for career advancement. Don't be afraid of this. Talk to them about it and see how they can advance within your own company. Thank you. And I'm sorry about the internet issue.
Great. I guess that's over to me then. Thank you so much, Zoe, for that really interesting and powerful research that you guys have conducted. I mean, it really brings to light a lot of the underlying causes of the Great Resignation, and just really interesting food for thought for HR professionals across all industries and sizes about what active steps we should be taking to anticipate the needs of our employees and put in place strategies, actionable strategies to continue to engage and retain people. And so, I mean, there's just so many different things we could talk about, but I want to really focus on this topic of growth, which is something that came out in the quick poll that we did, and I'm going to share some research as well. And I want to talk to you about learning opportunities as a real vector for engagement and retention, and just give you some concrete examples and share some of my stories as the head of learning at 360 Learning, as how we leverage growth and learning opportunities to really retain employees, to engage and retain employees. So on the next slide, please. Just to also provide some context and some research that we've conducted on our end, this is, I wanted to share some facts and figures from some research that we've done on US-based employees. One thing that you said, Zoe, that I think really rang true with me, you said to use surveys and data and to listen to your people and to make decisions and take actions based on the data that you have in the HR realm. And that's absolutely true. That's something we really believe at 360 Learning. And the data speaks volumes about the importance of personal growth opportunities and training and development, learning and development within organizations. So on the next slide, what we really see, I'm not going to read these numbers to you. I invite you to take a closer look at them, but people are not just looking for, they're not just looking for content when it comes to learning. I mean, there have been a lot of approaches that have been taken where you know, we just offer a whole load of content to people and expect them to navigate it themselves. But what they really want are opportunities for connection and collaboration. That is how people learn. That is how people grow. That is how people challenge themselves in organizations. And so we need to think about learning differently. And that is why at 360 Learning, we talk a lot about this notion of collaborative learning. And on the next slide, thank you, we see a little bit what that actually means. So collaborative learning, sort of in opposition to more traditional learning, which is very much sort of a top-down approach where, you know, you identify needs at a very high strategic level and you build these big training programs to try to address them, and they're very slow. It's difficult to update them, and you're really just counting the number of people who complete them. In opposition to that, there's this notion of collaborative learning where you are listening to your people, where you are identifying the needs that they have identified themselves, that will allow them to grow, which will allow them to progress in their careers, which will allow them to have more impact, to be even more high performing in their roles. And so when you look at this, I invite you just to take a moment to think about your organizations and how learning looks in your companies, and whether or not you're taking a more traditional approach or a more collaborative learning approach. And collaborative learning really happens at all stages in the learning process. So on the next slide, we'll see just a little bit more around that. Collaborative learning happens, for example, during the creation of learning materials. So rather than just it being a central L&D function, pushing content out to people, by really collaborating between subject matter experts, between employees, between central learning and development teams, people find that the courses that are created, the content that's created, is much more useful. On the next slide, we see that collaborative learning also happens in the kind of the life cycle of training materials in your organization. By decentralizing ownership of your training content, it means that it's up to date, it's maintained more easily. People have ownership for it, and it's not these, you know, sort of the old form of online courses which took forever to update and make small little changes to it. So the content is more relevant, it's more up to date, and therefore it's more useful as seen by your learners. And of course, on the next slide, please, collaborative learning happens during the learning process itself. So through engagement, through questions, through peer-to-peer exchanges. Here we see an example of a true-false question, but I think a better example of collaborative learning would be more open-ended questions where a learner is asked a question and can respond, and a peer or a colleague or a subject matter expert can provide them with feedback on that response. And that's really where learning happens, in those human interactions during the process. So how can we do all of this? And if we go to the next slide, there's many different ways that collaborative learning can sort of come to light in your organizations. But I just wanted to show you, to kind of walk through one specific example, and that is coming back to this idea of learning needs, of listening to your employees and allowing people to express the needs that they have for their own personal growth, for their own career advancement, to be more impactful in their roles. On the next slide, please. I used to work in a very big organization. I was in charge of learning at a large organization, multinational with hundreds of thousands of employees. And we had a very top-down approach to learning needs. As a matter of fact, it was sort of an exercise where really top management would decide kind of what the learning strategy would be, and in accordance with the company strategy. But it was quite top down, and that is not what people want. That is not what employees want. What employees are really looking for is ownership of their own learning, and that means that they get to decide where their needs are. What are the relevant needs, or maybe their direct managers get to do it. And so you really need a means, a channel by which people can express those needs. And that's truly engaging, and that's truly collaborative, and that is responding to their personal their personal needs, and that's what's going to drive engagement and retention through your learning strategy. So if we look at the next slide, I want to kind of walk you through what a real life example of that looks like, and I could have chosen from many, but let me share with you just a little bit kind of the adventure that we're on at 360 Learning. So 360 Learning, we are an education technology provider. Our platform enables our clients to kind of spread this culture of collaborative learning in their organizations. And we ourselves are growing very, very quickly. As a matter of fact, you may have seen that we recently announced a round of fundraising with three investors from around the world. So we have really ambitious growth plans, and as a result, we're hiring quite a bit. And in turn, we are building out our teams, and a lot of new managers are responsible for building their individual teams. And so what that means is they need to understand, they need to have a real vision about what a high impact team should look like and what the makeup of that team should look like. So if we move to the next slide, the challenge with that is that many people don't necessarily have the perspective to build out their team and to understand and to say, well, these are the talents. These are the individuals that I need on my team in order to drive the impact that's expected from me. So where that has brought us is, and on the next slide we see that because we offer our employees this channel in order to express these needs, this was in fact expressed as a learning need by someone in our organization. And as you can see, the collaboration starts really there. Someone declared a need. Individuals are able to upvote that need and say, oh yeah, I have a similar need myself. There's a whole sort of social feed of comments where people can ask questions and specify and help really develop that need. So collaboration starts even in the earliest stages when that need is first declared. And on the next slide, that collaborative process continues when we sort of plan for how to develop the very specific content that's going to be created to address that need. So here you see just sort of a screenshot of the kind of project plan, interactions between myself and an internal subject matter expert. And we were able to really kind of break down and say, okay, this is the need that our managers have identified. They want to be able to benchmark what effective teams look like, what effective organizations look like in their specific professional family. And so working with a subject matter expert internally, we sort of broke that down and were able to build a quick project plan that would help unlock that subject matter expert's knowledge and create content that's relevant for our learners. So there's collaboration at that step as well. And then on the next slide, we see collaboration during the learning phase itself. So here's just a screenshot of the course around building organizational benchmarks. And here's one sort of activity from there with information around finding the right peer groups, finding the right similar companies who can help meet your needs. And as you can see in the social forum on the right, there's an exchange between the subject matter expert and between one of the learners, and even in yellow between the subject matter expert and myself, where I asked questions and challenged him as he was building that course. So, so here's an example of a need that was expressed to help as our company grows. And the collaborative process at each step as to how that was built. If we can move to the next slide, please. And so ultimately, what we're trying to drive is engagement and retention. And as Zoe said, you need to have the means to gather data in order to understand the impact that you're having. So in this case, I measure the reactions to the content that was provided, the relevance of that content, and all of this really helps me understand how effective is the learning that we're providing in meeting the original need as it was expressed, as it was laid out. And so we have, quite high levels of reaction scores, of relevance scores, and that really enables me to know that the content that we're meeting is on point, that it hits the nail on the head, as I say, and is for those learners who are engaged with it, is in fact offering them opportunities to grow, to really respond to the needs that they've identified, and to recognize that there are growth opportunities within the company. So that's kind of a quick view of a very concrete example. I mean, as we saw, we're talking about retention strategies and the need to offer clear growth opportunities for people in your organizations. And in order to do that, you really need to take this bottom-up collaborative approach where you listen to people. They're able to pinpoint the areas that they need to grow in, and we're not imposing things on them. You're giving them that voice, that chance to express those needs. And the very process of responding to those and learning is collaborative from start to finish. And as you can see, that pays off when we measure the impact of that training and ultimately how it drives retention and engagement in our organizations. So that's pretty much it for me. On the next slide, I'd like to invite all of you, if you work in learning and development and you're interested in sort of more concrete and actionable ideas, to please click on this link and to join this community. There's also a link in the chat. This is a community of L&D practitioners that we've set up, and there's members from all sorts of organizations all over the world. And we talk about challenges that we're facing in management training, in technical training, in different types of skills training, and just a lot of actionable ideas from L&Ds across all sorts of companies and sizes to help you drive learner engagement and retention. So I invite you to click on that. That'll open up in another window, and there's basically a form to fill out, so you can do that. But we're going to have a Q&A right now, so maybe you just want to put that to the side for the moment and do that right afterwards, if that's something that you'd be interested in joining.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, Zoe and Jonah, for that great presentation. Yes, feel free to check out the CLO Connect community. So right now it's time for the Q&A. So if you have any new questions that have come to you, you can put those in the questions tab. I see we have a few questions already. So you should all get the recording of this event and the slides as well. And we can put links to the studies we talked about as well. We have a question. I think this one might be for you, Jonah, but Zoe, certainly feel free to jump in. Sometimes we as individuals do not know what we need. Do you still have the manager offer guidance? So in the context, I think, of learning needs.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think that this needs to sit within the context of how you foster development within your organization. So there should be opportunities for individual contributors to also speak to their managers, to have feedback on their performance, to help them identify where are their areas for growth, and then to help them articulate those. I mean, the learning needs channel that we saw is just sort of maybe the last step where you can put that in a forum and it can be addressed. But there should be accompaniment behind that. At 360 Learning, we have a quarterly performance review process where there's an opportunity for managers to do that, and we ask very intentional questions around what areas of personal growth should individuals be thinking about. And then, of course, managers are invited to think about that more holistically for their whole team. What direction strategically are they trying to move in? What skills do they want to develop? So absolutely. I mean, I think that we sometimes, you don't know what you don't know. There are blind spots, but there should be opportunities in the organization to help people identify that. Coming back to something that was said earlier, that needs to really fit in with a culture of, continuous feedback, of benevolence in your company. That needs to be that identifying those areas for growth need to be done in the right way. People need to understand that it's coming from a good place, that it's well intentioned, and to provide them with evidence as to why those areas for growth are important. So absolutely, I hope that answers the question.
I'd like to also add that I think performance reviews should focus on this, because growth is learning and learning is growth. And if you're learning in your job and you're ongoing, then you feel good that you're growing. And if you're stuck and you feel like you're doing the same thing and you're not learning, then you feel that you're not growing. So I think managers are expected to figure out together with the employee on the performance reviews how they feel and what more do they want to learn. It doesn't necessarily mean external learning. It doesn't mean sending them to different courses. It means what makes them learn, even sitting with mentors in the company, even having those SMEs do those training sessions, you learn, even joining a demo. So, I mean, it's definitely, I think, it's the responsibility of managers to help you figure out how do you continue learning. It's part of their job.
Great, absolutely. I think we can take maybe one more question about content creation. So, does creating content with a subject matter expert make that content more engaging and more relevant to people in the company? So, Jonah, probably for you.
Yes, but I guess what I was trying to say is that engagement and that relevance comes through at different phases in the life cycle of learning. So by allowing people to identify their areas of development, that in and of itself is engaging and relevant. By working with the subject matter expert to create the content, that makes it more on point and more pertinent to your organization. By leveraging collaborative learning in the learning experience itself, where it's not like you're just sitting looking at a screen and flipping through slides, but you're actually being challenged, you're asking questions, there's opportunities for human interactions, even if they're asynchronous. So all of that is like sort of that virtuous cycle that leads to engaging and relevant content. Getting the subject matter experts involved is part of that, but again, giving people a voice, getting different people involved in the creation, and getting different people involved in the learning process is really what makes for that full engaging cycle.
Makes sense.
Great. All right, I'll try and sneak in one last question before we move on. Sometimes there's a battle between learning engagement versus compliancy training. Any tips or recommendations? Might be another one for you, Jonah. Sorry to.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, sure. Question was, sometimes there's a battle between learning engagement versus compliancy training. Any tips or recommendations?
Oh, yeah. I mean, compliance training is a topic that you probably need to deal with in a lot of different industries. I think that people tend to measure compliance training based on completions, which is important for reporting purposes and for a lot of other purposes. But ultimately, I think that organizations they're trying to get more out of compliance training than simple completions. They're really trying to demonstrate the value of it in helping people be impactful and effective and doing their jobs properly. So I think that there are other things that you can be measuring even for compliance training. You can be looking at engagement scores. You could be looking at relevance scores. Some of the content is maybe mandatory, but the way that it is brought about, who you bring in, who's involved, how you structure it, how you make it a collaborative process can make it more engaging. I mean, it's sometimes a challenge, but I think you need to think about not just driving completions for compliance training, but also making it relevant and impactful for people in their jobs, and that they'll find is engaging.
Great. I don't know if Zoe, you want to chime in, or we're pretty much out of time now, I think. All right. So again, thank you so much, Jonah and Zoe, for that really great presentation. For the audience, if you would like somebody from 360 Learning or Hibob to reach out to learn some more, you can indicate that to us in the polls tab. So just let us know in the polls tab. We've also got some links on the screen there where you can visit us and learn some more as well. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.